You are Locked On Wolves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
T-Wolves survive a little second half scare from the Wizards. They hold on at the end, though, 120-109. That's your final. They moved to 10-5 now on the year. What's going on back in the lab? Back at it. Another T-Wolves POSTCAST episode right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks to you guys, by the way, now the #1 sports podcast network. That's Jack Borman, a Wolves expert, NBA expert. Give him a follow on X at Jared Borman13. I'm Luke Inman at Luke_Spinman. Of course, you got to follow our guy, Ben Beacon, as well, host of the Locked On Timberwolves show. Remember to like and subscribe. And again, you can always find all the video on the Locked On Wolves YouTube channel and, of course, all the audio wherever you find your podcast. Lots to get into, Jack. Player of the game, I want to hand out that one. Plus, I want to ask you, who fudged up the most and let Washington back into this thing in the second half? But first, just off the top, like we always do, no J-Mac tonight. Jaden McDaniels out with a wrist in his 5th longest active streak in the NBA. That would be snapped tonight, 157 games. So didn't look like it was going to matter, at least not in the first half. Wolves go up as many as 27. They're up 25 at halftime, but Wizards chip away. We'll get into that a little bit more. They trimmed that lead down to 5, had a sweat in there for a minute, 5-6 minutes left in the game, but Wolves flip on that switch, man, back in those final 4 or 5 minutes, let's say. They pull away, and Jack just continued to take care of business against these sub-500 teams.
Yeah, no question about it. I think when you play teams like this, all you want to do is come away with a W, and the Timberwolves have done that so far this season. You can't come, if you're the Wolves, you can't decide who you're playing. You just got to go out and take care of business against these sub-500 teams, and that's exactly what they've done. I think especially for a team that has evidently, had its struggles on both ends of the floor for different stretches of this season. I think it's nice to at least be able to win while you're working out some of those kinks. And I think for the Wolves, again, we talk about it every year. Chris Finch talked about it before the game, that every game really matters in these Western Conference standings when you look back at it at the end of the year, and you got to take all these games seriously. And the Wolves have done that for the most part, which has been great. I think, again, they took advantage of a team that has really struggled with turnovers all year. They won 21 zip in points off turnovers in the first half. Turned it over only twice in that first half as well, which was exactly what you want to see. And then, like you said, no Jaden McDaniels, right? So a lot of people thought Jalen Clark might start as kind of the one-to-one defense swap, but Mike Conley got the start. And my presumption there is that Chris Finch wanted to keep Jalen Clark out there with the bench in the non-Rudy minutes. And sure enough, Jalen Clark played every single minute that Naz Reid was out there at the 5. And again, played really well for the most part defensively. I mean, Timberwolves had a 109 defensive rating with Jalen Clark on the floor tonight. That would rank 2nd in the NBA for an entire season, and it was about 118.5 with him off the floor. That would rank 24th in the NBA this season. So that gives you kind of an idea of how important his defensive impact has been. I think he's kind of been the antidote to the Wolves defense really struggling in those non-Rudy minutes, as we've talked about on the show the early part of this year. And so I think, again, all you can ask for the Timberwolves on a night like tonight is hopefully get a couple guys in rhythm, maybe get to the end of the bench. They didn't do that after it certainly looked like they were going to. But, again, a win is a win is a win. And happy for the Wolves to be able to pull another one out and keep pace in the Western Conference.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
As mentioned, Wolves up 25 at halftime, got up to 27, just as you might expect, by the way, at home against this 1-12 Washington team. But, Jack, imagine turning this game on at halftime and watching the Wizards just chip away. I mean, they cut it to 12 going into the 4th. They got it down to 5 with about 5 and change left. Then Mike Conley splashes that huge 3, and they kind of rode that momentum, so to speak, to the end. What was there one moment, one sequence that you just noticed the Wolves start to click and put it all together, or finally put this 1-12 team away?
Yeah, I want to go back to the first half. I know necessarily maybe didn't decide whether they won or lost the game, but certainly gave them the breathing room that they ended up needing in that 4th quarter. And that was at the start of the 2nd quarter. Timberwolves went on a 16-0 run over the first 6 minutes to get up 21. And there were just a ton of awesome highlight plays in this stretch. Naz Reid was tremendous, as he has been in these second quarters, the last handful of games here. He had 12 points in the first 6 minutes. I thought Rob Dillingham, obviously, Rob was pulled pretty quickly in that fourth quarter, but I thought he had a really good stint in that first half. He had 2 steals. He set up Nas really nicely a couple of times, had 3 defensive rebounds. And then I just thought, missed a couple of shots, and instead of trying to pull another one, pump fake, got a guy off the air and made a great skip pass to set up an open corner 3 that didn't fall. But it's the type of process that I think you're looking for from him, and I think he's really kind of finding a little bit more of a groove off the bounce with his floor game these last couple games. So hopefully he can keep that going and find any semblance of a jump shot that just has not been there. But I think, again, defensively he's been better, and he's been better too with his floor game. But yeah, I think other positive notes from that, you had huge blocks from Rudy and Nas. Those were 2 of the biggest blocks we've seen all year at Target Center. The crowd was totally into it after that. And then I thought Dante DiVincenzo, just the way, we'll get into it a little bit later, but just the way that he helped push pace was phenomenal. Is kind of the guy that they were looking to throw outlet passes and then hit those subsequent hit-ahead passes to guys that were making finishes inside. And Bones Highland only played 10 minutes in this game, but I really liked what I saw from him in the first half. I thought he was really competitive defensively, made some really nice stops. Only 1 of 4 from the field tonight, but again, I thought that, as a veteran that you can trust to go out and not be an issue for you. He certainly played that role well in that second quarter. So that was great to see. And that was really what I think, allowed the Wolves to just open this thing up, and the vibes were awesome heading into the break, which was great to see.
You mentioned 2-3 solid performances tonight. We got to pick one with the player of the game.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
Game MVP tonight, Jack. Julius and Nas, I got to think your runaway favorites tonight for you and your money, but pretty cut and dry or pretty tough to pick tonight? What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, it was going to be pretty cut and dry, and then I think Julius Randle ended up playing really strong in that fourth quarter in the second half, balancing that out. But I'm going to give it to Nas Reed tonight. Obviously it helped that the Wizards were 0 of 8 with 5 turnovers in the first 6 minutes of that second quarter as the Wolves blew it open. But Nas Reed just continued for the 3rd straight game to be a phenomenal bridge between the first quarter and the second quarter. It was his 3rd straight game scoring at least 17 points in the first half off the bench. Per stat head, that has been done 11 times this season. Nas Reed has done it in 3 straight games, which is pretty impressive. And only Vit Krejci, former Wolf, for a cup of coffee, is the only other guy in the NBA who's done it multiple times. So for Nas to finish with 28 points, made 5 of his 10 threes, had 5 rebounds, as a plus 16 in 27 minutes. I just thought that he's really finding his footing, and he certainly looks to be all the way back on both ends of the floor. I think he's had a few double doubles this season. He's been more competitive on the glass. I think that was where he kind of channeled most of his energy while his shot wasn't falling, and did a really good job of that. Chris Finch was very complimentary of his effort on the defensive end of the floor and on the glass before tonight's game. And then for him to continue to get up threes in droves and knock a lot of them down, I think has been really important. The Wolves have been averaging much closer to 40 threes a night, which is right where they were last season, near the top of the NBA since Anthony Edwards came back, and kind of coinciding with that, Nas Reed has really found his shot and been a high volume 3-point guy, which has been super important for the Wolves. And I think something that can't necessarily be underrated too, that the box score doesn't tell, is that when Nas Reed gets it going, Target Center is just all the way into the game.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of gives credence to the Wolves playing at a faster pace. And Nas Reed tends to be a guy that can just be a tidal wave of positive energy and good momentum plays when the Wolves play at a much faster pace. So tremendous game for Nas, 3rd game in a row that he's been really strong, and certainly looks the part of the 6th man of the year that the Timberwolves have really needed him to be, as everyone else kind of settles into things offensively.
I know you're always live at Target Center, 4-game homestand. You've been there quite a bit the last week and a half, but you can tell even when Nas Reed gets that place juiced up on the broadcast itself too, which isn't always, depending on what sport, what venue you're watching, isn't always the case, but certainly Nas Reed definitely gets that place juiced up, and did again tonight for sure. Plenty more deep dive, including who fudged up the most and let the Wizards back into this thing. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by Monarch Money. Ever go check your bank account and go, where'd my money go? Dining out, online shopping, entertainment, so easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's not just another budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, spending. It's all in one place. You stop just managing your money, and instead you start building some wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com. You're getting 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNBA. You're getting half off your entire first year. This episode also brought to us by Prize Picks. Without a doubt, most fun I have playing daily fantasy. You can win up to 25 times your money this NBA season. Why I love it. So easy to play. All you got to do, you select 2 or more players, and you pick more or less on their projected stats. That's it. Points, rebounds, assists, three-pointers, you name it. They got it. Plus, they now offer Apple Pay. Quick and easy deposits in your account all season long. Right now, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA. You're getting a first deposit match up to $100. Last but certainly not least, this episode brought to us by Built. Nobody likes paying rent, but if you got it, you might as well get something for it. That's where Built comes in. They're changing the game by turning your rent into things you can actually use. Earn flexible points that can be redeemed towards hundreds of hotels, airlines, future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, you name it, they got it. Turn your rent into rewards. Start making points around your neighborhood. Go to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That's joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the link so they know we sent you. All right, Jack, we're unveiling another brand new graphic for our brand new segment tonight. You ready, Jack? Check this out.
Uh-oh, somebody messed up, and it's time to let them know with Who Fudged Up.
I love it. Another trivia answer here tonight, Jack. Who gets the first fudged up award of all time on this show? Who is it and why?
Yeah, unfortunately a predictable one, but it's Anthony Edwards. I think, Ant has really struggled with his three-point shot of late. Versus Dallas, he was 1 of 7. Denver, he was 0 of 8. Sacramento was 1 of 7. So 2 of 22 entering tonight over the last 3 games and goes 1 of 8 tonight. So he's 3 for his last 31 from 3 over the last 4 games. And he made up for it in the Denver and Sacramento games. He had 12 made free throws in each of those, or 12 free throw attempts in each of those games. Only had 5 tonight, just seemed very passive. A lot of isolation play from Anthony Edwards tonight, not a lot of ball movement when he was out there on the court. I really did not like the offensive process when he and Julius Randle were on the floor, especially early in the game. And then again in that third quarter, it just felt like a lot of just isolation. And sometimes isolation can be a really good thing. I mean, Julius Randle's been the most efficient isolation player in the NBA this season in terms of points per possession. But with Anthony Edwards, sometimes he just likes to dribble around and then take a step back 3 instead of trying to create an advantage for himself or any of his teammates. And there was a lot of that tonight where it just didn't really seem like Ant was doing anything with the basketball in his hands. And I don't know if tonight was just a one-off issue, but you'd certainly hope that it's just a short-term thing for Ant, because it's very rare that he goes through these types of slumps. And I guess you could say, looking back at you could say, okay, Jack, well, Anthony Edwards, look at the 3 games before that where Ant made 17 threes over a 3-game stretch. And you could certainly, that's certainly a fair response. But I just think that Ant hasn't necessarily played with great energy, right? Ant has been averaging up near 30 points a game on the season, if you remove that Indiana game where he played only 3 minutes, but he's scored just 31 in the last 2 games and has not shot it very efficiently and has been settling for a lot of jump shots and has not been a kind of a flow or ball movement catalyst in any capacity over the last 2 games. So we'll see what happens with Ant moving forward. I think he'll bring a lot more juice on Friday, considering that that's a cup game. And it's very clear that everybody in this Timberwolves locker room cares a lot about trying to get to Vegas and win that money and trying to, go through a little bit of a competitive fire ahead of the playoffs this season. But you got to hope, because this Timberwolves team is a totally different beast when number 5's got it working.
This is what you'll be talking about.
I feel like we could go after this game, man. Tale of two halves. You already broke down the top 2, 3, 8 topics. I feel like we could go a multitude of ways with this one tonight, Jack. I'm just going to tee you up and you tell us, what should we be talking about tomorrow morning after this one?
Yeah, I think there's two things that we'll be talking about. The first of which is that thankfully Julius Randle has been there as a closer for the Timberwolves on the night that Anthony Edwards hasn't had it. I think he does a tremendous job of sensing when the game needs more of him and how to impact the game in those moments. And Randall's 2-point shooting was tremendous tonight. I think he was 10 of 15 from two, and a lot of those were hard-earned twos, and got to the free throw line for 13 attempts to slow the game down and take a little bit of momentum out of the Wizards' sails. And again, just the physicality that he plays with is awesome. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing I think we'll be talking about is just the pace that the Wolves have been playing with has been great. The Wolves are second in the NBA in pace over the last 5 games. They're 13th on the season. That's up from 25th last year. And so I asked Chris Finch about that before the game tonight. And he basically said, you said before the season that you want to be a team that plays at a higher pace. What do you think have been the contributing factors to that? And he said what they've really tried to stress is the hit-ahead pass. Throw the ball down the floor and try to pass your way up the floor as often as you can instead of just dribbling it up. And he said last season the Wolves had far too many guys that would come back to the basketball instead of just trusting that one guy would get the ball and that everyone else would fly up the floor. And what I thought was most notable is that he said, quote, "We're being a little bit more defined in terms of outlets, who can bring it up, when they can bring it, and what we want to flow into with different people when they're bringing it. Last year, we had way too many possessions where we'd have multiple guys come back and want the ball off of a rebound, and that just slows things down. So we have a little bit better role definition," is what Chris Finch said. And so I talked to Mike Conley before the game in the locker room, and he said that that's something that's becoming more common around the NBA, and that it's new for the Wolves that they've had this, but he feels that it's been working really well. And then the other advantage that they have in those types of situations is that, if you're facing a team like Portland, right, that, Portland is a team that wants to press you, full 94 feet. And what they can do in those moments is, okay, maybe we're not going to be able to fly up the floor necessarily, but we have, bigs, quote unquote bigs, and Jaden and Julius, who are able to dribble the ball up the floor when their defenders aren't necessarily guys that are going to want to defend 94 feet. So I think the Wolves kind of figuring both sides of that out has been important. But I also think it's been a huge reason why Dante DiVincenzo has been a much better version of himself this season than he was kind of for most of last season. And so I asked Finch if Dante was a key beneficiary of that. And he said, absolutely. He said, quote, "He was always kind of a driver of playing faster, but sometimes he was just running all by himself. But now he'll inbound quickly and play up the floor with his teammates and not wait for his teammates that are running in that possession. He's done it at key times too, like when we really need to pick up the pace. He's recognized, hey, even after a made basket, we got to get it up the floor faster." And so I think, again, Dante did a great job of playing with pace again tonight. It's been really evident on this homestand, and I thought he was a really solid contributor again tonight. 12 points on 8 shots, but he had 6 assists. I thought a lot of those came in semi-transition and transition opportunities. And I just think his defensive intensity and his impact on that end of the floor is felt a lot more when the pace of the game speeds up, and he's just kind of able to thrive in that chaos, if you will. And so just to leave you with one stat for the Wolves, transition frequency. So this is the percentage of possessions that are classified as transition possessions. Last season, the Wolves, 15%, was dead last in the NBA. This season, it's up nearly 20% to 19%, which is 13th in the NBA. So going from last to 13th with basically the same personnel is really impressive. And then in terms of efficiency, they were 15th last year. They're 11th this year. So they've always been pretty good at converting those transition opportunities. But it obviously allows your offense to take a huge step forward when that much of an increase is that you have that many more possessions in transition versus having to slow it down in the half court where your offensive rating is significantly lower. I want to say the league average this year in the half court is like 104. So been great for the Wolves to get out and run, and Dante has been a big part of that.
Yeah, well said there. Great breakdown. Fantastic stuff after a surprisingly very entertaining game. T-Wolves survive the Wizards' second half scare, 120-109. That was the final 10-5 now on the year. Much love to all you guys, all the everydayers out there that always make us your first listen. All you guys coming in the chat with us from game to game. Like and subscribe. Go follow Jack, too, at JRBorman13. We'll catch you Friday night. That's at Phoenix, West Coast trip. We got a late one, 9 p.m. tip. Until then, signing out.